All right, so here we are in part 2 of practice exam 4, question 11. They want me to graph that. F of x is y. Let's go to a fresh screen here. So y equals minus x squared plus 8x minus 7 minus 8x squared plus 8x minus 7, right? Okay, so now we have no parentheses squared. So then we can't just do the opposite same thing. Well, how do we find the vertex then? You find the center vertex by using x is negative b over 2a. So x, the x value of the center of the U-shape, we're trying to graph a parabola, a U-shape. The center of that parabola, the x value is negative b over 2a. Now what do we mean that? So here's a is negative 1, b is 8. So x is negative b, negative 8, over 2 times a, 2 times negative 1. So that's negative 8 over negative 2. So x is positive 4, isn't it? So we got x, then plug in x to find y. So now I'm going to take that and plug in to what? To the original. If I just bring the original down here, y equals minus x squared plus 8x minus 7. So take that 4, plug it in, plug it in. What do we get? We get y equals minus. Now remember, when you plug into a formula, put parentheses around what you're plugging in. Like that, parentheses around that 4. Okay, so y equals what? Minus 16. Because that 4 is squared, the negative is not squared. So the negative just stays there. Negative 16 plus 32 minus 7. So that's important that you see that minus is not squared. What's that going to be? Is it 9, I think? Yeah, 9. So y is 9. So the center of the parabola, the vertex, is what? It's x comma y. What's x? Right there, 4. And y is 9. So there's the center of the parabola, 4, 9. Let's go to a fresh screen. So we have y equals, it's still number 11, negative x squared plus 8x minus 7. And we've now got the center is 4, 9. So now we can graph the thing. So over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 9, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So up at 9, over at 4, right there, over 4, up 9. There's the center of the U-shape. Now from that center, where's the U-shape going to go? How do you find the second point? Same way we did before. You use the front slope. So right here, negative 1 over 1. There's nothing in the front, so it's an invisible 1. There's a negative sign, actually. There's a negative sign in the front. So you make it 1 over 1. That's rise over run. It's negative, so that means this one's going down, huh? Front slope is rise over run. So it's going to rise negative 1, down 1, run positive 1, over 1. Right there. Connect the dots. So there goes the U-shape on that one. Okay, so we got the graph. Now they want the X-Intercepts. How do you find X-Intercepts? Remember, you set Y to 0. To find intercepts, you always set the opposite letter to 0. To find X-Intercepts, you make Y 0. To find Y-Intercepts, you make X 0. Opposite letter 0. So we make y 0 in the original equation. So let me grab the original equation right here and bring it down. So it's y equals minus x squared plus 8x minus 7, and then you plug in 0 right there for y. So you get 0 equals minus x squared plus 8x minus 7. We got to solve that now for x. How do we solve that for x? Well, I don't want a minus in the front. That's just a pain. It's just difficult to deal with a minus in the front. So multiply through both sides of the equation by -1. That's okay to do, right? We can always do the same thing to both sides of an equation. If two things were equal before and you treat them the same, they have to be equal afterwards. -1 times 0 is still just 0, isn't it? And negative times negative is positive x squared, negative 8x plus 7. So that's easier. I'm just doing that because it's easier to factor something that has positive in the front. So let's factor. We'll do the diamond. I'm looking for what multiplies to be 7, adds to be minus 8. Multiplies to be plus 7, adds to be minus 8. What two numbers do that? What times what is 7? Well, 7 times 1. How can they make minus 8 if both are negative? Both negative add to be negative 8, and they multiply to be plus 7. So that's x minus 7, x minus 1. And so you know what to do from here, right? You set each one equal to 0, so you're just going to get x is positive 1 and positive 7. That means right here at positive 1 and 5, 6, 7, right here at positive. This is where the graph hits. Well, I didn't do that very artistically, did I? Let me try that again. So 5, 6, 7. So it means it comes down and boom, right through there at 7, and the other one, boom, right through there at 1. At 1 and at 7. So it wants the coordinates. What's the coordinates of this? Is over 1 up 0, over 7 up 0. That's what it actually wants. It wants the two x-intercepts, 1, 0, and 7, 0. There's the two x-intercepts. Okay, now there's one more thing we have to do. We got to find the y-intercepts. It wants those. So let's start again with the equation. So new screen, y equals minus x squared plus 8x minus 7. And now last thing, it wants the y-intercept. So again, how do you find intercepts? Remember back here, x-intercepts, you set y to 0. Always opposite letter is 0. So x-intercepts, you set x to 0. So y-intercept make x 0. Always make the opposite letter 0. So if you make x 0, if you take this equation, the original equation here, and you make x 0, what are you going to get? 0 plus 0 minus 7. Minus 7. Now, careful. What that means is if we went way down here, the graph would eventually cross the y-axis at down 7. That's what that means about the graph. It hit the y-axis down there at 7. What are the coordinates of that point? That would be over 0 down 7, huh? So that's what they actually want. They don't want just negative 7. They want 0, negative 7, because x is 0, y is negative 7, right? X equals 0 led to y equals negative 7. That's the y-intercept. So the easy way to do that, it's always just going to be that last number, isn't it? Because when you plug in x0, these guys are going to drop out. The y-intercept will always just be that last number. Okay, so here we are in number 12. They want me to graph that. So it'll be a lot like the last one. Y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. 8x plus 7, okay. First thing is, how do we find the center? When there's no parentheses squared, to find the center, you've always got to do x equals negative b over 2a, right? Do you see the difference? See, look back at number 11. See, same thing. So, got to do that when there's no parentheses squared. You've got to do it this way. So negative b over 2a, what is that? Here's a is 1, b is negative 8, so it's negative b, negative b over 2a. So b is negative 8, and a is 1. Look at that. So we got negative 8. So that means x is going to be what? Positive 8 over 2. X is 4. So we got x is 4. Now how do we get y? Plug in to find y. Plug into what? Plug into that original equation. Bring that down. Y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. So grab that x is 4 and plug in. So y will be 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 7. 16 minus 32 plus 7. Is that minus 9, I think? Yeah. So the center then is x, y. What was x? 4. And minus 9. That's very similar to the last one. What was the last one? It was 4, 9. This one's 4 minus 9. It's funny. Okay. So 4 minus 9. That's our center. Let's go to a fresh screen. So we have y, this is still number 12 here. Y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. Minus 8x plus 7. Center 4, negative 9. Oops. Okay, so let's graph it. So over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, down 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right there, so over 4, down 9. There's the center of the parabola, the center of the U-shape. Now, how do we find the second point? It's always the front slope equals rise over run. So what's in the very front? There's nothing, so it means there's a 1 over 1. It's positive, right? There's nothing there, so there's an invisible positive 1 over 1. That's rise over run. So that means from our starting point we go up 1 over 1. Right there is our second point. Then we connect the dots. This one's going up. Whenever there's positive in the front, it's always going up, huh? So there's the U-shape going up. Now we have to find the X-intercepts. How do we find the X-intercepts? We set y to 0. Remember, intercepts are always found by setting the opposite letter to 0. So bring this down, and it's y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. Put in 0. 0 equals 8. X squared minus 8x plus 7. Let's try to factor that. So I'm going to say, what two numbers multiply to be 7, add to be minus 8? Multiply to be 7, add to be minus 8. What times what's 7? 1 times 7. Both negative, right? Because that would add to be negative 8. And they would times to be plus 7. So that's x minus 1. X minus 7. And you know from there, if you set each one equal to 0, the answers are going to be positive 1 and positive 7. So that means at positive 1 and 5, 6, 7, at positive 1, I'll put it here, positive 1 and positive 7, those, so my thing missed a little bit. Should have hit right, should have come in right there. So at positive 1 and positive 7, those are the X-intercepts. How do you say the coordinates of those points? Over 1 up 0 and over 7 up 0. Those are the X-intercepts, right? That point is over 1 up 0. This is over 7 up 0. They want both numbers, x and y, right? Y equals 0 led to those x values. So y equals 0 in both cases. Finally, they want us to find the Y-intercept. Let me create a little room. here for the y-intercept. How do we find, so remember, if we found the x-intercept by setting y to 0, we find the y-intercept by setting x to 0. So you take the original equation, which is right here, y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7, and you just plug in 0 for x, and it's really pretty easy, isn't it? This goes away, and y is just 7. That means way up here, off the screen really, at a height of 7, at the point over 0 up 7. So that's over 0 up 7. The graph hits way up there. That's the x and the y, because the x 0 led to y 7. So there's the y-intercept, 0, 7. Okay, so on question number 13, they're giving me f of x and g of x, and they want f of g of 5. So what does that mean? What is that little weird circle thing in the middle there? That means 5 goes into g, and then the answer goes into f, right? We go right to left on functions always. So it means f of g of 5. Functions inside of functions. That's what that little circle thing means. It's called composition. We're composing. Like a musical composition is several instruments put together into one piece of music. We're putting one function inside the other, composing them together. All right, so what's g of 5? G of 5 means put 5 into g. Put 5 in right there. It's here, I'll do it in the blue. So it's minus 5 times 5. And so it becomes f of minus 25. Now put minus 25 into f. So this inside has become minus 25. And now put the minus 25 into f. Here's the f function. It's x squared minus 4x plus 2. So plug in minus 25. And what are you going to get? I think that's positive 625, positive 100, plus 2, what's that, 725? 727 is the answer to that question. So what do? We put the 5 into g right there, got minus 25, and then minus 25 here into f. Okay, so on number 14 here, they're giving me f of x is 3x plus 7, g of x is x minus 1, and they want f of g of x. Remember what that means again. That means one function inside the other. You keep the order the same, f coming first, then g, f coming first, then g. In a minute, they're going to ask me to go the other way and find g of f of x. Okay, so back to this one. So this means all of g has been put inside of f. So take all of g and put it right there inside of f. And so what do you get? 3 times that plus 7. 3 times x minus 1 plus 7. So work that out. Boom, boom. 3x minus 3 plus 7. 3x plus 4. That's the answer to part 1. Now part 2, let me move it up a little bit. We're going to do the other order, g of f of x. So that means g's on the outside and f's on the inside. So f, this time, it's the other way. So f, let me rewrite this and be back the way it was. Okay, so this time, we're putting f inside of g. So all of f is going to go right there inside of g. So that's going to equal something minus 1, right? Because x minus 1, that's g. And we're putting in there what? F. What's f? 3x plus 7. So here's f. It was plugged in right there, and then a minus 1 afterwards. And then just simplify that. What is that? 3x plus 7 minus 1 is plus 6. And there's the answer to that part. Okay, so number 15, they're giving me this function. They want me to find the inverse. How do you, and put steps up here, how do you find an inverse function? Step 1, you switch or invert X and Y. X and Y. And then, so let's do that first off. So let's switch X and Y. So this is Y right here. F is Y. So switch X and Y. So X comes to the outside. Here, I'll change the color. X comes to the outside, Y goes over there. They switch. So there's step 1, switch X and Y. Step 2, solve for Y. How do you solve for Y? Subtract 4 from both sides. So X minus 4 is 2Y. Last step to get Y alone, divide through by 2. So divide them all by 2, so Y equals X over 2 minus, and then 4 over 2 is just 2. So this is the inverse function. That's what they want you to say right here. I'm going to say a half X minus 2. That's the same thing, right? X over 2 is the same as a half X, because that's just a 2 on the bottom. So there's the inverse function. Now they want me to graph them both. So let me graph the original function. What was the original function? It's right here. 2x plus 4. Remember how to graph? This is y equals 2x plus 4. You start at the 4, so up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. There's your first dot. Start at 4. And then this is your slope. 2 over 1, rise over run. So go up 2 over 1. There's the second dot, and then just connect them. Oops, I'm not doing a very good job there. Whoops. Etc. So there's that line. That's the original line. Now let's graph the other line. The other line, we start at minus 2 right there. And here's our rise over run, the inverse. It goes up 1 over 2. Connect the dots. There's the inverse graph. Both graphed on the same axis. Okay, so on this question, they want me to find the inverse function. So how do we find the inverse function? Step 1, invert. Switch X and Y. So this is Y, the function is Y. So switch them. So it'll be X out here, Y over there. Okay, so now step 2, solve for Y. So how do you solve for Y? Put this over 1, diagonal, diagonal. X times 2Y minus 5 is 1 times 7. Distribute. 2xy minus 5x is 7. Trying to get y alone. Here's y. He's saying, I want to be alone. Get rid of all this stuff. So that means add, or just jump. Let's just jump that 5x over. And so we'll get 2xy equals 7 plus 5x. When that minus 5x jumps to the other side, it becomes plus. Last step, y wants to be alone. So just divide by the 2x. Divide by the 2x. Boom, boom. Y is alone. That's the inverse function right there. Okay, so number 17. We're supposed to graph. This is y equals 4 to the x minus 1 power. So I suggest just make an xy table and just plug in the 3 easiest numbers you know for x. That'd be 0, 1, and 2. And just use your calculator. So we're going to get 4 to the 0. Must always put in a 0 there for x, which is 4 to the minus 1. Hit the buttons on your calculator. Take 4. Hit the x to the y, the power button. Or maybe it's an up arrow power button on your calculator. They're different on different calculators. And this is an up arrow. It's kind of bugging me here. Up arrow. And -1. And hit equals. And you will get 0.25. The next one, 4 to the, I'm going to put a 1 in there now, right? So I'm plugging in 1. 1 minus 1, which is 4 to the 0. Do that in your calculator, you just get 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. And finally, now we're going to plug 2. So now we're going to plug 2 in there. 4 to the 2 minus 1 is 4 to the 1 is 4. So now put those dots on a graph. Here's what I mean. I'll just make a graph right here. So over 0 up 0.25. So overs here's, let's say here is a 1. So over 0 up 0.25, that's like barely up at all. Over 1 up 1, over 1 up 1, about right there. Over 2 up 4, 2, 3, 4 up here. Over 2 up 4 like here. See what it's doing? See what this graph is doing? So which graph looks like it's doing that? Well, B and C both are going up to the right. Looks like B hits really low down here, whereas C hits up there, hits the axis kind of up there high. We hit really low, don't we? See that? So the answer is B, not C. Okay, number 18, they want me to solve for X. What do you do when X is in power? It's in the power zone. That's what we have going on here. X is up here in the power zone. What do you do? How do you solve for X? Step 1, make both bases the same. So what do I mean? I mean the 4 and the 2 bases. I've got to make those the same. How can I do that? 4 is the same as 2 squared, isn't it? And so that's what we do. The 4x minus 3 is still up there. And the other 2 on the other side is still there. So you see what we did? The 4 has become 2 squared. Now the 2 bases, see how they're both 2? We made the bases the same, but we haven't changed anything because, 2 squared, that's still just 4, isn't it? I haven't changed anything, any values. All the values are the same. I just made the bases the same now. Okay, so now where can we go from here? Well, that means this, once you do that, once you make the bases the same, step 2 is circle the powers set equal. So circle this power. Now what's the power over here? Nothing, which means invisible 1, huh? So bring just the power down and just the power down. There we go. So I ignored the 2 bases, in other words. So circle the powers and set them equal. You see why that has to be the case? Because if you have the same bases, if both the bases are 2 to some power and 2 to some power, and they're equal, well then those powers must be equal. Or 2 to one of them wouldn't equal 2 to the other if the powers were different. So the powers have to be equal. Once you've made the bases the same, the powers have to be equal, or the things wouldn't be equal overall. Okay, let's solve that now. Distribute. 8x minus 6 is 1, and 6. 8x is 7, divided by 8. There it is. The answer is 7/8. Okay, so number 19, you do number 19 on your calculator. The top goes top, the bottom goes bottom. What do I mean? It's going to actually be 2 logs. You're going to make this 1 log into 2 logs, and you make the number on the top, the 4 is a little higher up, make it go on the top, and the 16 is a little lower down, make it go on the bottom. Hit the buttons on your calculator. It'll be log 4. Remember to, whoops, I'm getting scribbly here. Hit the buttons on your calculator. It'll be log 4 divided by log 16, hit equals. And I think you should get 0.5. Oh, they want a fraction, so make it a half. So the answer is a half. 0.5 is what your calculator will tell you. It's a half. All right, let's do number 20. So 20 says this. So we have log base x, that x is low down, of 16 is 4. So what are we going to do? We've got to somehow really get rid of the log word. So how we do this one is get rid of log by same base powering. Well, let's just say same base powering both sides. So what's the base right now? X. That's why it's lower down. That's what we mean by base. Base means bottom, like the baseboards in a house are on the floor, right? The bottom. So when we say what's the base, we mean what's the thing on the bottom, the thing lower down, that X. We'll use that same base to power both sides. So I'm going to say, okay, X and X. So I do that same base, and it's a power. It's X to the log and X to the 4. It's up in the power, right? Well, these cancel each other out. That's what a logarithm is the opposite of a power. So when the base, when they match, whoops, I just erased it here. When they match, they cancel. So what does that leave me? Just 16 x to the 4th. 16 x to the 4th. So what is x? We got rid of this stuff. 16 is x to the 4th. I did x as the base on both sides, got rid of the log. Now how do you solve for x? I would just solve this one by using my calculator. What number times itself 4 times, x to the 4th, is going to be 16? What does x have to be? X has to be 2, doesn't it? And there we go.